This is Making Light. Julie Hurt and Kate Fogger are soul-level intuitives and animal communicators. This show is about us sharing our experiences in the hope it will help others along their path. So let's go make some light. Hello everybody, I'm Kate Foggo, this is Julie Hurt, and together we are and have been making light for a good 10-20 minutes now, fanning around before we started. So we've got lots of news. We have found, as we've often mentioned, through the series that we do, or the themes, if you like, that we come up with during the week, that so many of our themes actually interlace, even though they happen separately for each of us through the week. And then when we come together and talk about, what are we going to talk about this week, we realize that there are these really definitive themes that come up. And so what we thought, and an exciting little experiment with the universe, is actually we're going to decide on themes in advance. So, because I think the universe is sort of showing us there are all these themes. I mean, there is the argument that we often say that actually there's probably only a handful of things that ever really go wrong in different forms. But either way, it's very obvious when you actually bring it down to personal problems that things fall into different themes, and that's an easier way to relate to it. We thought if we come up with the themes in advance, that then gives us the opportunity for all our clients, the work that we do independently as well as together, to line up with that theme and see where it takes us. So this is going to take us, we think, into a whole new world of synergy. Don't know, might be a dismal failure. I doubt it somehow, because it's already happening. So we have chosen some themes for the next few months. So you can, if you have any strong feelings about any of the themes, you can let us know. But we were going to start in August with overwork. Then September, procrastination.
So what's happening there?
Hey.
I just wondered what was happening, if you were okay.
It's just Zoom. And then we hummed and hawed about October because we had a lot of ideas about the theme, but we thought actually the common theme in all the ideas we were having was actually about bravery, and then patterns for November. So within each of these themes, we have at least 4 weeks. So any week where there's 5, we're going to do something completely different.
Special.
And we have some ideas about that, but 4 weeks we thought we would try and line up with the 4 negative beliefs. So Julie and I are both certified soul level intuitive coaches, and we recognize 4 major negative beliefs within which all your negative beliefs fall. There is overlap and there is merging, and like everything else in the world, there's a whole lot of going on, but largely we talk about 4 negative beliefs, which are, this is the order we've decided to do it. So week 1 will be not lovable. So if you believe you are not lovable, week 2 will be, I'm looking at what the fuck's W?
Not worthy.
Not worthy. So not lovable, not worthy. My personal favorite, not good enough, for the 3rd week. And then 1, not safe, supported and protected. So all our negative beliefs will fall in some way into one or other, sometimes both, but they'll usually lean one way or the other. And again, that will depend on the circumstances, the perception, whoever's receiving it. But we can really boil down all these negative beliefs into one of those categories, and it just helps people understand what they're working on, because we're actually all working on all of them, but we tend to have, as life offers us, themes going at a time, bigger themes, bigger themes. So mine has mostly been not good enough, and now it's sort of moving into not safe, supported and protected, and unlovable as things go. How about you, Julie?
I have been working with Lucas, my dog, on not worthy for a while, like years. The layers are onion-like in the, it's the gift that keeps on giving. And then what am I moving towards? Am I moving towards not good enough? There's been some overlap, a lot of where it's like handing the baton. Here, now let's work on not good. So, but yes, everything touches any one of those 4. That's the fun, is to go and figure it out.
And it is, and actually one of the things we do in the soul level coaching is we train you to start recognizing your workarounds, and you can start seeing how they fall into these different beliefs. And actually, your workarounds in particular, and these are the behaviors you do to stop yourself feeling pain because of these negative beliefs. For example, if you feel unworthy, you may do certain workarounds to make yourself feel worthy, that sort of thing. And when you recognize these behaviors, workarounds, actually what the soul level coaching teaches you is to start recognizing them all. Eventually you start recognizing the really stupid, silly, small, funny ones. And once you can start to laugh at why you never wear your good pants on a Monday and always save them for the going out and things like that. Pants being, of course, don't know, what do you call them? Knickers?
No, you call them knickers. We call them, no, that's panties. Wait, are we talking underwear?
Yeah.
Oh, underwear or panties? I hate the word panties.
Okay. Do you? I love the word panties.
Oh,
it's funny because panties to me panties used to mean really skimpy things. Now that, of course, I'm over middle age, panties are big, comforting, solid things.
Cover that shit up.
G-string, you must be joking. Hand me my panties. Right. So when you start to laugh at why you don't wear your good underwear, and and that's actually how you loosen all these negative beliefs. So it actually becomes a game. It's not always a fun game, but it can be. So stay with us. Okay, so that's really what's coming. I just wanted to share that with you. Then, of course, we're left with, oh my God, we've got all these great ideas. What are we going to do? Because it's the middle of the month. Because for us recording this, as we are in the middle of July, obviously you're going to get it a bit later, which left us a week free. And the universe provided Judy with a podcast. Hello, darling. What's going on? Oh, baby, come here. Say, oh my God, the cat hasn't been fed. Hang on a second.
Oh my goodness. Uh-oh, we'll be right back. Yeah.
Apologies for that. The cat, yes, has reminded me very loudly that she hasn't been fed today. Julie, podcast.
Yes, podcast. So the podcast that I listened to yesterday is called Hidden Brain. For those of you in the United States, it used to be a show on National Public Radio, and then they've left the platform to some degree, and they've created their own podcast, which you can find in all your favorite podcast players. It's Hidden Brain. The host is Shakar Vedantan. I love his name, by the way. I love saying it. Anyway, so
again?
Shakar Vedantan. And I
said it about 8 times because there's at each interval, and I didn't catch it at all.
Yes, I'm Shakar Vedantan. That's how he says, hi, this is Hidden Brain. I'm Shakar Vedantan. I love just anywho. Anyway, okay. So the last couple of weeks, usually what happens is I play this podcast before I go to sleep many times, and it's such a wonderful show. The last couple of weeks, he started off with The Paradox of Pleasure was the title of the one. And then they did a second episode the very next week called The Path to Enough. And as I was listening to The Path is Enough, I listened to them in reverse order. They want you to listen to them in order because there's science behind the way the brain works, as far as the more pleasure, the more dopamine that you get and continue, your brain begins to shape. This is to some degree else, it's addiction is part of this. Your brain begins to shape where you want more and more and more and more and more. And then our culture, because of that, and I say Western culture, I'm talking Western culture, has created ways in which for us to get more and more and more and more and more, like manufacturing. They give an example of cigarettes. Used to be they could roll, when tobacco was first taken by the Western cultures, they used to be able to roll like four cigarettes in a second. They created manufacturing. It became 20,000 in a second. And that's just one example. So anyway, but the more pleasure and the more that we get from something, the more we want it, of course. And then we have created whole cultures around all of this and this abundance. And to some degree, you can make the leap that because we have access in our culture, we have access to some degree to so many things, it's skewed. So as Kate and I continually talk about this separation of humans and nature, separation from one another, this is to me another little ingredient in that cauldron that helped us separate from nature, this idea of abundance, this idea, and we have abundance in so many things, and many of us want to look at it from a money financial perspective. But abundance, comes in so many different forms, and we've just devalued, to some degree, our culture has devalued many other things. And that's what I just was like, I was listening to it and I was just like, oh my gosh. And I love it. What I really love is when all the things that we experience from a metaphysical perspective in our soul level intuitive coaching and soul level animal communication coaching, or soul level animal communication, when that all metaphysical, getting information from the divine, from the animals, from our guides, when it hits up against science, which science is also the divine, so we won't, but anyway, but when there's actual scientific, like people are studying it from that perspective, I'm like, this is fantastic, because it just shows all the other stuff.
Yeah, but in a way, that's actually that's a workaround for both of us in a way, actually, because for me it certainly means, oh well, this stuff must be real then, because there's still a little bit of me that goes, well, science is this, that, and the other, you and your woo-woo shit. But when they interact like that or prove it, you're like, well, see it's real.
Yeah.
I take exception to, I was absolutely fascinated with it, and I actually listened to both of them. I mean, I've only been up 6 hours and 3 of them were listening to this. Not quite 3, but I do take exception to some of the language around it. But we'll come to that. But just as an aside, because we were talking about workarounds, and you see how I leapt up when the cat needed fed.
Oh yeah. Yeah, good point.
There's a workaround there. The thought of my cat being hungry is just appalling to me. I immediately thought, oh my God, I'm not good enough. I forgot to feed the cat. The point is she's been asleep on the fucking sofa all day, so she's obviously not that hungry. But, because I have such a thing about food, that, the thought of her being hungry and me having not fed her, that's why I drop everything to feed the cat. So that's just an example of a workaround.
And you want to know, so for that actual example of a workaround, so here's an example of a workaround for different, and how it would play out with different humans. So for me, when Lucas pops up and wants to do something, I will immediately drop anything that I'm doing to see, are you okay? What's going on? Are you okay? Do I need, what do you need? Because I don't feel worthy to stay focused in what I'm doing. Even if I'm like, he's actually working with me too on resting as well. Like, let's chill for a while, and we're going to get into overwork next week, but I will drop the rest. Like, how he was waking me up in the middle of the night, and he hasn't been doing that lately, but I will stop my own rest to take care of him. I will sacrifice my own, what I need, for his. And he's like,
doesn't everybody do? I bet Brad does. Like, he just thinks I'm like, he's just like, just fucking, so what? She's hungry. Oh,
yeah.
I don't feel good enough. I've made a mistake. I've forgotten. I know what it's like. And then all my own feelings of unlovable come up, because in my view, if somebody didn't feed me, I would feel they didn't love me. God, it's a complicated world, isn't it? And our animals are with us every step of the way, nudging us, poking us. There was a lamb this morning, and I was trying to meditate, and it was just, and it had one of these voices that goes, like, there's always one or two, and I was like, oh my God, like, it's just constant. And I'm saying, like, why does this upset me? I know it's because his mother's in the other field, because the farmer's opened the other gate, and I've watched them, and they're too frigging lazy to walk over and see where mum is. So they just stand in the field going, and they're not babies anymore,
Yeah, they're teenagers.
I'm like, oh my God, something happened, and I expect to see him lying in a ditch with his feet up or something. And anyway, so all of that. So podcast.
Yes.
So in summary, what they were saying was that we have a seesaw in the brain. And when you hit the pleasure side of it, so okay, that's seesaw. If you hit the pleasure side and you release dopamine, that pleasure and pain, and I don't agree with the language around it, but for the sake of the discussion, you have pleasure on one side and pain on the other. And if you hit the pleasure side and get hit a dopamine, then you're out of balance, whereas the body is always typically wants to be at homeostasis, which is there. So what happens then is when it tips there, then you get what she calls the dopamine gremlins that will all come and jump on the pain side of the fulcrum and actually bring it to there.
Mhm.
Now, what's interesting, the first time she discussed it, she used the word hangover. And I thought, actually, I have always believed, right? Do you ever give your dog catnip? No, of course you don't. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize until I finished the sentence that it was completely irrelevant. Right? People that have catnip for their animals, like I've only given it to Twiggy a couple of times, and I felt that although it took quite a lot to get her going, and then she went a bit weird, and I wasn't actually quite sure because it just felt like I didn't know her. It's like she was exhibiting behavior that was just not normal. I wasn't particularly aggressive, and actually I felt like she was very probably high on something, but it felt, I could feel that her energy was different.
Mhm.
And then afterwards she would be really withdrawn, and I thought, why do we think that's okay? Because basically you've just given her a hangover, haven't you? Because I don't believe there's any sort of shot of pleasure you get, as in chemical pleasure, that isn't followed by some sort of withdrawal, headache, hangover, something. So I won't give Sally catnip for that reason. And that's basically, so what she's saying is that's the pain gremlin, or the gremlins, basically the dopamine police jumping on this, because it is the same receptor. And they then actually cause the body to reduce future dopamine to put you in lack to some degree. And the reason behind that, which is fascinating, is that without that lack, there would be no drive for you to go and repeat that behavior. An example I used, which I thought was very good, was a date tree. So you come across a date tree, woohoo, sugar, bang, you get your dopamine. You then get a hit of dopamine, your bandits, gremlins, whatever, jump on the dopamine thing to get it back out of whack. If there wasn't that deficit created, you have no incentive to go and find another tree. And they've proved that with rats, which I thought was a horrible thing. I can't find a non-horrible way to tell you that, to rephrase it. If they managed to biologically amend so, rats so that they couldn't create dopamine. Without dopamine, if they put food in their mouth, they would apparently take pleasure from eating, but they wouldn't, even if the food was a body length away from them, they would starve to death. There was no incentive for them to go and get that food. I'm like, how can you do all this shit to rats? You know, thank you to all the rats in the world.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I hope they fed them until they died. That's all I'm saying. Hope they put it in a but so that's how powerful. What's going on, Julie?
I don't know. That's what I'm looking up. There's like a ton of bird stuff, and then there's squeaking. I know there's been some juvenile. Okay, continue. I don't know. The circle of life, I think, is happening outside my window.
Right outside your window.
Yeah.
So I thought that was absolutely fascinating. But then, so she's then talking about addiction, and then she talks about, because she's a psychiatrist, she's very much a scientist. This is not a spiritual podcast at all. It's very much about the science.
Mhm.
But her point is that there are so many activities in our modern world that are basically creating addictive behavior. So, I mean, we've got sugar, which we all know about, and we've got drugs, which we all know about, but she's also talking about online shopping, gambling. In her case, erotic fiction.
Her own case, yeah, which was interesting, yeah, to share.
What started out as teenage, I thought it was a really funny story about the fact that she went looking for a vampire story, and it was all in the teenage section. She started reading them, just romance novels with a bit of erotica, and then it anyway. And the other thing that was interesting, that as a psychiatrist who specializes and treats addiction, she had no idea until she stopped that she was actually in a really serious addiction. So she's saying all these behaviors, so the clickbait on your phone, and games, I guess, to some degree, anything that gives you that little rush of pleasure, or that little rush of it's not really pleasure. See, that's what I take exception to her word pleasure, because it's making it sound like we don't deserve pleasure. I think it's a very particular thing, and I don't think it's pleasure particularly. When I'm sitting playing my game and I get my little rush, or I buy something online, I get that little rush of dopamine or whatever, it doesn't feel like pleasure, right? It feels like a sort of achievement. I think it's very dangerous language to talk about these things as if there's pleasure, when there are so many genuine things that are good for you, that bring you joy. And I don't like her hijacking the word pleasure. So that was my main point of that,
Okay.
because you're talking about, I get it with sex, but when you're talking about porn, I'm not sure that's okay. Maybe you can call it pleasure, but it's very much this compulsive behavior as opposed to something that's pleasurable.
Right. I would just suggest for those that listen to the podcast that she's talking about pleasure and pain in the clinical sense.
Yes.
And the chemical sense. Not that we are to deny ourselves pleasure in how we're talking
Yeah,
about
so
it.
I just think they use a different word for it then. Because it's implying that we're not entitled to joy. Because basically her point is,
no, I don't think she's not saying we're not entitled to joy. I thought what she was talking about was we need to understand that there is an actual chemical reaction behind the feeling of pleasure and
not pleasure. That's what I disagree with.
No,
it's
hang on
very specific. Okay.
Hang on a second.
Oh,
When there is an actual chemical reaction behind us feeling pleasure, and it can be pleasure in the simplest of things, like for her, reading a book, right? Someone turned her on to the Twilight series. She started reading the Twilight series. She then, because of that constant dopamine hit for her, she kept wanting to have more of it, more of it, more of it, more of it. And because she got used to, from a chemical perspective, she got used to experiencing pleasure on a certain way, but then she would get almost numb to that pleasure. She had to go deeper, and then she had to go deeper, and then she had to go deeper. Huh?
That to me is not pleasure. Pleasure implies conscious enjoyment, and I don't think that is conscious enjoyment.
Well, that's the fine line that she's talking about. When we have an abundance to what it is that gives us pleasure, the chemical reaction of pleasure, when we have abundance to it, when we can get a hold of it, when we have access to it, because there were 4 qualities at the end of one of them. She lists the 4 qualities that then begin to create this addiction.
Abundance, availability,
Quality,
potency, and something.
Access, which is, she was talking about access. It really made me think about the crack epidemic, but that's a different story that we can get into later. Just because we white people created access in specific communities, so then they would get addicted to it. It's a whole thing. Anyway, we'll talk about that later, or not at all. But anyway, it's a thing. It just, for me, it was much more about, she's talking about it from the chemical perspective of what's going on in the brain, and how to recognize that when you start off on pleasure. Like, for example, she talked about her one patient that in order to relieve pain, she used marijuana, but she got so much to relieving the pain that what she actually started to relieve, and depression, she was also relieving depression. What she began to relieve is she continually hit that dopamine pleasure chemical thing, was she was only relieving the hangover aspect of it. She wasn't actually treating the root cause. And so that, to me, is what when we have such a great abundance and have access to whatever it is we want, and we're not mindful, this is your mindful thing, and we're not mindful of what it is we're actually enjoying and why we're enjoying it and what we're doing, this is where this addiction, the separate aspect of it comes in.
I feel very triggered. I'm trying to work out why. And I think it's this, do you know what it is? And this is my problem, is this insinuation of blame.
On ourselves?
Well, no, the way, and I know that's not what she means.
Right.
But it's like this, how to explain, as if we're bad people, we're spoiled people, we've been given all this abundance and we've got all this pleasure. Because from a personal perspective, I don't feel that's pleasure. You like online shopping, okay, there is, and I get and I recognize, because she actually told a story about someone, I get and I recognize that I get a lot of, I wouldn't call it pleasure, right? But I get hooked into finding I need a watch that I don't need a watch. I would like a swim watch that can actually track how far I go, because I think it will incentivize me to go a little bit further, which is an addiction in itself. But basically, I'm a lazy moo and I want to push myself to go a little bit further. And I've noticed that behavior of my friends out swim watches go, oh, do you know what, if I do another 200 meters it'll be a kilometer, and they go and they push harder. So I've been looking for one, but I don't really have the money and I don't really want to spend the money. And and I will find all these ways and look for secondhand ones and go, especially, and when I find the one I want that's got the features I want and all of that, there's a lot of scientific stuff in that is what I'm good at. And I recognize that I probably get some satisfaction, I wouldn't call it pleasure, satisfaction out of fixing the problem, achieving the problem, buying it. By the time the watch has arrived, I've completely forgotten about it usually. I mean, I will use it, but all that. So I get all that, but it's the use of the word pleasure is really triggering me, because it's making out like it's bad, and I don't know that.
Oh, okay.
That it's sort of sinful. I don't know, maybe it's the word pleasure, and maybe it's because it's tied in with drugs, which give you an obvious high at first, not later. But they use nicotine as an example. Anyone who smokes a cigarette will tell you they don't get pleasure from smoking a cigarette. They get discomfort when they don't smoke a cigarette. They might get pleasure psychologically from the first one they have in the day, but the rest of it is just alleviating need. What's the word?
However, it's creating that dopamine chemical reaction, and she's talking from pleasure. She's talking from the chemical brain neurological perspective. You're talking, huh?
Are you sure? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're talking, and you are more wanting to have pleasure as an emotion. Pleasure, because when that was a really good example, the smoking, because do I have an do I have is it when I was younger in college, of course, when we would go dancing, because this was the 80s, I would have my menthol cigarettes, right? Because I was trying to be, or my Jarums, whatever ones. Jarums? Those are those clove cigarettes. Oh yeah, they're lovely. Never mind, we don't need to promote. Anyway, they punch holes in your lungs. Doesn't matter. It does. Anyway, I used to derive pleasure, the emotion, from having the cigarette, because it created this whole, I felt I then was part of the whole aesthetic that was the 80s in the punk / new wave scene type stuff, right? So there's pleasure. At the same time, though, that was happening to me emotionally, I was having like, oh my God, I can't smoke. Why am I smoking? This is bad for me. Like I was having this duality the whole entire time. And of course, it didn't really ever hit to me as an addiction, because I could never reconcile the two. And then, that's a whole other story. But I get what so I had derived pleasure from the aesthetic, but did I actually derive physical pleasure from it? I usually woke up the next morning.
You didn't try hard enough. You have to keep at it, Julie.
Yeah, I got to keep at it in order for my body to want it too, because the next morning I would feel like crap. I'd miss my 8 o'clock women's lit class, all that type of stuff. So, yeah, but that's the difference.
Yes. Okay. I'll let it go, because I appreciate we're drifting into that. But so her point is that a lot of everything, shopping, I mean, you look at everything online now. If you go onto a site to buy a ticket, for example, there will now be pop-ups that come and say 2 left at this price, and all that brings about that anxiety, that need, and all that then becomes addictive behavior. I've noticed also, when I've talked about this before, like ice road truckers used to be really interesting story about whether people get from A to B before the ice melted, and they'd be on the edge of your seat, but you sort of trusted that they weren't going to let you see people die and that they would make it. And now, if you watch it, have you watched it recently?
I've never watched it. I've driven it.
Billy Joe's got 20 minutes to get to here, otherwise the entire family are going to starve to death. It's all like really amped up that the business is going to go, if they don't make this, apart from the threat itself, which is big enough, they're going to come off the road and die. they've now amped it up to the business is going to go down, or this family are going to be cut off and because this is the last run of the season, and if they don't get Jimmy's little bottle warmers, he's going to die of cold because he'll, but it's all really amped up, and they've brought all the business side into it. This is a small business and he can't afford, and he's got his truck loan, and if he doesn't make this run, then the truckload, his loan's going to default and his entire family's going to implode, and and all of that. You're like, this is nothing to do with everything. Even fucking wildlife programs now are all amped up to, oh, the lion's stalking the gazelle and look at him go, and and he's gonna tear it down, and that poor motherless thing lying behind, they make it all drama, and you're like, I get it. I don't need to know every time that Sally brings a vole home that she's left 20 babies under a bush somewhere. It's like, oh,
and that was that was actually the fourth aspect of creating this constant dopamine hit. If we look at the seesaw thing, that's my seesaw, is novelty. We can't, because the moment things become normal, we can't hit that dopamine thing again, and she was talking too about the news cycle. Mm-hmm. We used to get,
the nature of news is something new.
Yeah, we used to get facts and information reported to us without opinion. Just here's the information, Walter Cronkite, all that type of stuff. And then who wants to watch that? Supposedly. And so this is where psychology starts to play into plays into marketing, because then they begin to go more outlandish information on the news, more sensationalism on the news, and to pull us in and then to believe it's just become you. So you can see how, by not being mindful of what it is that we're actually doing in the moment. So yes, still following what makes us happy from an emotional perspective in Abraham Hicks. At the same time, we have to pull that mindfulness aspect into it. Okay, I'm reading this book. This really brings me joy. These are the things that I'm learning, and really having that understanding of everything we interact with, consume, and whatever, so that we don't we're just mindful, but we're also not necessarily over stimulating one part of that seesaw that you had with the other.
Because that was the point, wasn't it? Was that if you keep hitting the dopamine, eventually the body will go into deficit, and that's causing depression. I mean, that was really her point. It's not that having a dopamine is bad, it's that the side effect of having that dopamine hit is that your body will stop producing the dopamine because it's getting overloaded and it's out of balance, which means you are then constantly in deficit, which is what leads to the anxiety and depression in society in general. And that's a very interesting point. So I guess, because you see, I think I put it in the chat here, so I remember all the things that triggered in me. Hundreds of things triggered in me.
Can I just add to that real quick before you? So because when that dopamine, when your body stops producing that dopamine and it's trying to regulate with pain, that's when something is said to you that is like this, not you, Kate, but you, the universally, where the slightest thing will create pain. So you get the slightest comment said to you that hey, the sun is shining, oh my God, and you take offense to it. That's your body trying to recalibrate, which is where the depression comes from. Mm-hmm.
I missed that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, so the slightest thing in an effort for your body to get back to homeostasis, or your brain to get back to homeostasis, it will allow the slightest bit of pain to come through, whether it's a verbal or you get a little scratch and it'll just really, really hurt, even you stub your toe and it totally takes you out for a day, because your body's trying to get back in alignment with that balance. I
missed that bit. Wow. Okay. Well, I did. Yes. That's very interesting. I mean, I'm listening to it. I mean, I did go through the whole. It's funny because I went through all the 4 negative beliefs about that. Because on the one hand, I was like, obviously, as you've seen, triggered about how dare you say we're not allowed pleasure, but it's not so much that. It's sort of as you say, I'm looking at pleasure as the emotion, because I get this I guess it raised my hackles along the lines of, what the fuck you got against joy then, but that's not her point.
Right.
So first of all, not sure I liked her definition. The other thing is I'm thinking about giving up sugar. up and down with all my food issues and that. But sugar is a very good example because there's a physical example there as well of sugar and also sex. She used sex, and I don't know if the sex is the same thing, but certainly with sugar, there is a physical high that you get off sugar, and that causes that. But it triggered also my whole like not good enough again, and that was about. So we've talked a little bit about, and I think I sort of mentioned before that, you know, I play this 3D seat jam, I think it's called. It's just a stupid little game, very basic graphics about these little people on different configurations of airplane chairs, and you have to put them in the right order so they're all sitting in the right place. Again, very motivating, if that's a word, because it shows emoticons when they all shift and they're all unhappy and scratchy when they're in the wrong seat, and then when they sit down they turn green in the right seat and you get a big smiley emoji, you know. So there's lots of stuff compelling you to get it right. But other than that, I would have thought of it as quite a simple, low-key game that me, in my nerdiness, I enjoy, because I like the satisfaction of sorting them out. It's like I like puzzles where you sort things out and you tidy up the cupboards and, you know, I like things like that. I find it very soothing. I don't like it when they're nagging at you. I don't like it when you're doing things and someone's about to drown if you don't do it quick enough. And I won't play games like that, like, because there's a lot of those games, you know, they do the logic game but they add in some danger element that you know, there's one horrible one with fish in it that if you don't you know, it's a sort of Tetris almost, but if you don't make gaps in it for the water to get through, the fish at the bottom will drown, not drown, but whatever fish do when they don't have water. Yeah, that phase, that, and you're like, what is wrong with you people? And it's like there's some with dogs, and dogs have eyes like this, and the eyes get sadder and sadder and sadder because you haven't, like, who comes up with this stuff? This is so damaging. I mean, I'm assuming that maybe to not sensitive people that's funny. I'm going, that's like fucking hell for me. That's worse than a horror movie. Anyway, so I play these logic games. Is that a dangerous addiction? Because I am getting that little kick.
Yeah. Okay, so there's nothing wrong. There's absolutely nothing wrong with getting the hit of dopamine. It's how we're built. It's what we do.
Yeah, but if I'm going to go into deficit because of some stupid game I play on the toilet, or when I have to wait 5 minutes for an egg to boil.
Do you, but here's, I think for her, what the distinguishing when it gets to be overload is when there were two examples that she had. One was she was realizing that she was sacrificing quality time with her husband and her kids to sit and read her erotic vampire paranormal fiction.
Yeah, I do it when I have ostensibly nothing else to do, or I'm on the loo, or I'm waiting for something.
There you go. So if you're not, oh my God, I have to do this now, and I really like that, you want to just shut out the rest of the world and do the game. To me, that's the point when it's becomes addiction. The other point was when she asked her patient that was using marijuana, and she was asking her to quit and let's start to rebalance this dopamine. And the woman said, okay, but I don't want to do that now. And she's like, okay, well, I hear you. So you don't do it now. When do you want to do it? And she would say, well, 10 years. Well, if you want to do it in 10 years, and she would back her up in the timing, then why not do it?
Yeah, let's do that with me, because I think that's such a good tool. Do it with me and my 3D seat jam.
So if you gave it up, so will you give it up?
The question would be, so you say I spend half an hour a day all in.
Yeah. Well, I guess if the answer to the first question, would you give it up right now? Would you stop playing it right now if Gary or I asked you to, because it was taking over everything? Would you give it up right now?
I wouldn't give it up because you asked me to. I'd do it because I had evidence that it was damaging.
Okay.
Sorry, Julie, but I wouldn't do it for you. I'd do it for me. I might do it for you. I wouldn't do it for Gary because he'd be telling me off. He tells me off, actually not for that game. He tells me off for RuPaul. I'm like, he reads Piston Heads, which I think is like a toxic masculinity. Horrible people. I'm like, What's wrong with, happy gay people wearing dresses when you're listening to toxic masculinity? He doesn't engage in it. He just reads it and thinks it's funny. But I'm like, I don't care. It's still toxic. Sorry. So the question would be,
So just like she did with the,
would I still want to be spending half an hour a day playing this game in 10 years' time?
well, see, it's a half an hour. If it's only a half an hour a day, there's really a whole lot there to work with. If you were doing this consistent,
Yeah, but I don't need anything messing with my dopamine.
I don't know if
I
this
think I have enough issues with existential angst, which I never really know what that means, but it's a great word, isn't it?
Yeah.
Without, I want to give myself the best possible opportunities to feel good. So because there is a second question which is not to do with this, and that is, why are you doing it, Kate? If it's not for, if it A, is it for the dopamine, or B, it's a distraction, and I know that. What, am I supposed to sit on the toilet and think about my feelings? I don't really know. Like, when I have 5 minutes and what do people who are mindful, what would they do? What would you do if you had 8 minutes whilst something was cooking? Would you grab your phone? Would you look outside? Would you sing to, what do you do? Because I would go and do my little game.
So here's what I would suggest. Instead of looking for the issue or the addiction in something that you enjoy doing, I would actually look at something that we both struggle with and framing it in this dopamine thing. And that would be overwork, which is our theme for August. There's something about, because this is to me where also this podcast kind of, from a chemical reaction in the brain standpoint, yes, we have negative beliefs worked all around us overworking. We fill our plates. We don't know why. We don't know with what. We can't, at the end of the day, we're exhausted. Like, what the hell did we actually do today? I don't like, and we just get in this cycle because we have these ideas we have to contribute. We have like all the crap, right, that we've unpacked in our previous episodes, and we're going to talk about even more in August. Overwork, while yes, it feeds a negative belief and is a workaround for us in a lot of different ways with this overarching theme, there's an addiction aspect to it, because for some reason there's something about it, and that to me is part of what we can explore too this coming month, is when we are overworking and we're in that moment and we're like doing all the things and blah, blah, all this stuff, and then we're hitting that dopamine somehow, and we're
Does that feel like pleasure?
Say what?
Does that feel like pleasure?
No, that's why we're going to talk about it. That's why we're going to talk about it.
I'm not sure that being in overwork is hitting a dopamine. Certain aspects of it, like if you're ticking off a list or filling in a spreadsheet, yes, I get that. But my feeling of overwork when actually I'm not necessarily doing anything, but that feeling is there. This is what we're talking about with Julian, with in Eva. I'm doing a series with Eva, but that's actually my stress response. I've noticed. I have learned.
A stress response to, there's a pain aspect and there's a pleasure from a chemical perspective in your brain.
So yeah, so when I'm under stress, I move into, it feels like, well, it's overwork. Even if I'm not constructively doing anything, I am in overwork.
Yeah.
I am in panic, got to get this done, must achieve, must do. Okay, I'm having
the stress would be the pain part of your, let me get my pen, shall we? So I can do it the same way you did. So here's my pain, right? So pain, I got to get back to pleasure chemically, right? So what do I do when I'm stressed out? I start to overwork. What do I do when I'm overworked? Then I get stressed. So I'm constantly doing, and I think possibly this is something maybe to explore, is we're seesawing, but extremely back and forth. Or we stay in this overwork mentality to the point of exhaustion, and we're trying to figure out how to recover.
Interesting, because I would not have thought. So when we talk about your stress response, when you're in high alert, are you getting dopamine?
No, that's the point. You have to at some point. That's why.
I guess so. What you're saying is, I get in this state where I'm dopamine deficient,
Yes.
and I start the process of overwork to get those little hits of, yeah, totally get that, because that's me in a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And like, or a list, or online shopping, and I'm like, it's okay, the world is good because I'm being productive again,
Yes.
even though I'm achieving nothing, or what I'm doing is completely unnecessary, but I'm getting that little mental tick. Oh my God, you know what I've just realized? I did a Franklin Covey course. Do you remember him?
Oh,
100 years ago, in the days when people used to pay for you to train. Do you remember that?
I do. I used to.
So they had this system where in your Filofax, as was, you would write down a list of stuff you had to do, and then if it was in, and it was the difference between urgent and important, and that we always end up doing the urgent stuff rather than the important stuff. So the point was to put the big rocks in the jar first, and then you can fit all the little rocks around it, so that you focused on the big important things instead of the little urgent things that fill our days, which is why nobody gets anything done anymore, because they're constantly interrupted with urgent emails that are actually not important but sound urgent. So if you remember, you had to categorize them: A, B, and C. A, important; B, sort of important; C, couldn't give a fuck; C's never get done, basically. And then you did the urgency 1, 2, 3, but the idea was you focused on A1, not C 1, 2, 3, which is what normally happens. So it's focused on the A's and not the ones. And he said, I don't know about you, but I get that little rush of achievement when I tick something off a list. And I remember going, she's right, you know. And that was probably the start of it for me, was recognizing that I get a little rush of pleasure, because now for me, it's about being obedient, it's about achieving, it's about being a good girl. I never thought that I wanted to be a good girl. I was never a good girl. I was a foul little girl. I was really not nasty, but like really disobedient. But apparently, as a grown-up, I became really obedient.
Yeah.
So it's her fault. I would have to hunt her down and kill her now.
As you describe all this, my chest is feeling like I can't breathe and that I'm getting heart palpitations. So when I worked at Kohler Company, I actually put myself under so much stress. I actually was having heart issues. And I still today have to be mindful of stress, because I was working with our colleague, Monica Klein, yesterday, and we realized it metaphysically clogs my arteries. And I have an LDL situation that I'm working through right now because of that board and all that. Anyway, however, when you were talking about that, it brought back all those memories of going through the Stephen Covey training. And I actually personally, he creeps me out, but that's a different story. There's a different.
I've seen him.
Oh, he creeps me out. He did this. Okay, this is why. So I used to have to take these trainings too, right? Back in the day. And I actually had daytimer portfolio organizers, they called them.
I still have his actually somewhere.
Franklin Covey, he partnered with Franklin Systems to have his own, but Stephen Covey he would talk, and he had the microphone. It was one of those round bulb microphones, and he would do this. Yeah, creeped me the frick out the whole entire time. So anywho, so when you say Covey, it's like, oh, it goes right back there. Okay, here's the thing. So I was a huge list maker, organizer. I would sit at my desk. I would usually on Fridays, when I was in my advertising career, I didn't usually have meetings on Fridays. I would sit at my desk from 8 until 6 p.m., only getting up to get something to eat, to bring it back to my desk, get more water, or pee. Those 3 things. My body at the end of those days would feel so like this, all that. So also that to-do list is, and just creating that whole organization. But the other thing that was coming to mind was this system, this culture and system that we've created, that productivity is paramount. That if we don't get these we're going to even organize the things we have to do versus the things we want to do. So I would say Stephen Covey, sorry, Mr. Covey, because I know you've passed on, and I don't think maybe you didn't intend this, maybe, I don't know. Productivity, Stephen Covey, versus what you want to do, what makes you joy, Abraham Hicks. And we're completely out of whack. We have to be productive, which is
I would argue that's not Stephen Covey. That's capitalist bastards that want to make lots of money.
It's patriarchy. It's patriarchy.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm all about patriarchy right now.
Stephen Covey just gave us the tools to be more efficient. Like all that, fucking work
Yeah.
harder,
Yeah.
work smarter, not harder. Fuck off, it is harder. Like,
I don't blame him. It is harder. It is harder. I don't blame Stephen Covey, but you're right. It is harder because it's not natural. We get ourselves out of a natural state by doing these to-do lists and then segregating our to-do lists and all of this type. And notice I did use the word segregation for diversity. But anyway, we're nuts. What are we doing this for? Yeah.
I've told you the first time I went to a retreat and I suddenly realized it like hit me like a train. I was like, everything that I'm good at, everything that I am proud of myself for achieving is killing me. Mm-hmm. Like, these are the things that if I want to be happy in my life, all the things that I excel at are things I should not be doing. Yeah. Oh dear. Time to go away and reassess yourself. So what do I offer that? And then maybe that's it. Maybe that's what I've been in ever since then, is going, well, if I'm not allowed to be good at this because it's not good for me, who am I? What do I do? Where's my value?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
my value is all to the corporate world because I'm efficient. I love lists. I like ticking things off. I'm clever, and I am clever. Okay, well, we've been talking for hours, have we, or not?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is a perfect stopping point for here and a launch pad in this new moon in Cancer, which is all about opening up our little creative gremlins and everything like that. I'm going to read you a little bit from my fabulous Chani Nicholas app. So I'm a Leo rising. So my tarot card of the week, and this might be for many people, was the Chariot. And she says, this new moon in Cancer right now, as we're talking, invites us to channel the Chariot's forward momentum toward the beings, creative hatchlings, and parts of our own selves we want to tend to and nurture. So we're going to talk about overworking next week. Powerful energy is at our disposal right now. It's up to us on how we harness it.
Well, there we go. We've done that. Right.
Yeah. So next week we're going to start off our new things where we do a theme a month. Next week, we're going to start talking about overwork as it relates to the negative belief of not lovable. So join us for that episode. Yep.
Just by way of another little teaser, we were going to say that we were actually going to bring in some sort of card reading into each, even if it's just.
We'll see how it plays out. Yeah, we might be we want to make sure we pull the animals into how to help us, support us, and all this type of thing. So so watch out for that too. We've got we're playing with stuff, and let us know if something resonates with you, if something doesn't resonate with you, let us know, please. Let us know topics, let us know your feelings. Let's start this conversation. However we can work with you, you work with us, we would totally welcome it. So any parting words today, Kate?
No.
Okay. All right, then thank you so much. What?
I was just, because I joined a new thing on YouTube, just exercise, and it was really hard, and it was actually really good. But, and she said, oh, please subscribe. And I thought, like, I never really got that. It's not until you start doing this yourself, you realize how important it is to the people who are doing stuff like this that you do subscribe. Because I know I'm really shit at that, and I don't subscribe because I'm like, oh, they've got loads of subscribers, they don't need me. Well, we don't have loads, but we have a lot, enough. I was thinking, because actually, that Gary made a joke about, you've only got 88 subscribers. Like, if you had 88 people in the room, you'd be nervous to stand up and talk in front of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not bad. So just a reminder to subscribe, but you can see us out, Julie.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say something about like fight the patriarchy and subscribe. However, subscribing also feeds the page. But right now, because of what we're talking about, if you subscribe, that would be great, because then others can find us, share us with your family and friends. That'd be great. All right. So thank you so much for joining us this week for Making Light Two Humans Being. I'm Julie Hirt. With me, as always, is Kate Foggo. We will be here next week and starting off the theme of overwork. So please join us. Let us have your comments, and take really good care of yourself this new moon in Cancer week. See you soon.